The question right now is, what is the story that led to you making room for cancer patients in your work, and what is unique about that work,
Okay.
that community?
Good. Beautiful questions. Well, ironically, the entry into that came through a cancer patient. Her name was Stephanie. And Stephanie called me one time many years ago saying, I hear you do these grief rituals. Why would I want to come? And we talked for about 20 minutes or so. She said, okay, I'll come. And she had a profound experience. All the losses that had never really been fully honored in her life, the loss of her breasts, or, friendships, possible dreams, work, all of these losses that you endure. And meanwhile, you're going through all these treatments, and it's hard to process all that. Well, here she had a container for it. And she kept coming. She came to like 4 or 5 grief rituals in a row, which we did. We were doing like 3 or 4 a year at that point. I was ambitious. And then I get an email one day saying, Francis, meet Michael. Michael, meet Francis. This is Michael Lerner from the Commonwealth Cancer Help Program, saying, you two, I'm very picky about the men in my life, and you two must meet each other. So I had just self-published my little book. At that point, it was called Entering the Healing Ground, because no one at that point in 2011 wanted to publish it. It was, grief wasn't there yet. So Michael and I got together. We did a couple new school conversations about my work. And at that time, one of their primary facilitators was dying of cancer. And so Michael said, would you be interested in sitting in and seeing if this is a fit? So I did. And it was like being in ritual ground. I mean, the moment you begin the process there, you have left ordinary time and you've dropped into liminal space. You are in this deeply sacred territory, particularly because all pretense has been left at the gate. We all know while we're sitting there the gravity of the conversation. What it is we're dealing with is this threshold time between this world and the one that's coming. So I felt so at home there. I do twice a year. I go there, and I've been doing it since 2013. So this is my beginning of my 11th year. I've done about 20 of these week-long retreats. And they're one of the most powerful times because when we do the group work, it's ironic. We rarely talk about cancer. What we talk about is the unlived life. And part of what cancer brings to the foreground is all that I have neglected, all that I've abandoned, all that I've set aside out of shame, out of, I don't matter, all of the wounds that have allowed me to set aside my life. Cancer says, in a sense, it brings it to the foreground and says, this must be touched before you leave here. And so that's the depth of the work is a lot about grief, about what we've neglected, what we've abandoned, what got left behind, the dreams, the creative efforts, the relationships, our own bodies, everything that we've denied. And I frame my work there with them with this idea of rough initiation, that what they're experiencing is a rough initiation, that the moment they got that phone call or the diagnosis being told them in person or however it came to them, they were beginning an initiatory process. All initiations contain 3 things. One, there's a severing from the world that you once knew. So you went from being a person who's just normally going through their life to somebody who now has cancer. And the second thing is that there's a radical alteration in your sense of identity. That I'm no longer who I thought I was. I'm no longer invulnerable to the world. I'm no longer, in charge of my own experience. And the third thing that you realize in true initiation is you can never go back to the world that was. Now, in a healthy initiatory context, those are good things. In a traumatized context or a rough initiation, these are terrifying things. the rupture, the ending of the world that you knew. I can't tell you how many times I've heard in that context, I don't know who I am anymore. And one of the sad things about the medical systems is they're trying to get you back to where you were. Bad thing. It's like when I was working with this man in my office who had this heart attack. I think I wrote about it, that he kept, eagerly trying to get back to his corporate job, and that's all he wanted to do. And I said, "You're going to waste a perfectly good heart attack. That this is an opportunity. There's an invitation here to step into a new experience, a new sense of identity." So we work with this idea of initiation a lot in that context. And I think it helps to give a larger holding space for what's happening to them. It isn't just a medical condition. It's actually a soul invitation to step into a larger identity, to become more of what it is that the soul came here to incarnate. And for most of us, we haven't really done that. We've learned how to become, nice people, but we haven't really learned how to embody the experience of a living soul. So cancer gives
Yeah.
this massive nudge down the road. Get to it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hmm.